I want to say something before we get into today's recipes. Over the past few weeks, so many of you have written in asking for slow cooker meals you can put together in the morning and come home to in the evening without standing at the stove. This video is my answer to every single one of those requests. 12 dump-and-go slow cooker dinners, all budget-friendly, all built for seniors. Let's get into it. Number 1. Slow cooker, honey garlic chicken thighs. There is something deeply satisfying about putting a handful of ingredients into a pot in the morning and coming back hours later to find something that smells incredible and tastes like it took real effort. This is exactly that dinner. Sweet, savory, deeply flavorful chicken that falls apart at the touch of a fork, served over rice or mashed potato with almost no active cooking required. Here's what you need: 4 chicken thighs, bone-in or boneless, 3 tablespoons of honey, 3 cloves of garlic, minced, 2 tablespoons of soy sauce, 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar or rice vinegar, half a cup of chicken broth, a pinch of red pepper flakes if you'd like a very gentle warmth, salt and pepper. Mix your honey, garlic, soy sauce, vinegar, and broth together in a small bowl to make the sauce. Season your chicken thighs with a little salt and pepper and place them in the slow cooker. Pour the sauce over the top. Cover and cook on low for 6 to 7 hours, or on high for 3 to 4 hours. The chicken will become incredibly tender, and the sauce will reduce into a beautiful sticky glaze around it. When it's done, serve over rice or mashed potato and spoon the sauce from the bottom of the slow cooker generously over the top. If you'd like the sauce slightly thicker, remove the chicken once it's cooked and stir a teaspoon of cornstarch dissolved in a tablespoon of cold water into the sauce remaining in the slow cooker. Replace the lid for 5 minutes and the sauce will thicken beautifully. This recipe makes enough for 2 generous portions. The leftovers reheat perfectly the next day and the flavor deepens overnight. Chicken thighs are specifically ideal for slow cooking because their higher fat content keeps them moist and tender over long cooking periods where chicken breast would dry out. Budget-wise, chicken thighs are one of the most affordable proteins available, and the sauce uses only pantry staples that cost almost nothing per serving, making this one of the most impressive-feeling budget dinners you can make with a slow cooker. Number 2. Dump-and-go beef and vegetable stew. A slow cooker beef stew is one of those dishes that genuinely justifies owning a slow cooker. It transforms cheap, tough cuts of beef into something deeply tender and rich through nothing more than time and gentle heat, and it requires almost no active effort to produce something that tastes like it simmered on the stove all day under careful supervision. Here's what you need: around 400 grams of cheap beef stewing cuts, cut into bite-sized pieces, 2 carrots peeled and cut into chunks, 2 potatoes peeled and cubed, 1 onion roughly chopped, 2 cups of beef broth, 1 tablespoon of tomato paste, a teaspoon of Worcestershire sauce, a tablespoon of flour tossed through the beef before adding salt, pepper, and a bay leaf. Toss your beef pieces in the flour and season with salt and pepper. Place everything: beef, vegetables, tomato paste, Worcestershire sauce, broth, and bay leaf directly into the slow cooker. Give it 1 good stir. Cover and cook on low for 8 hours or high for 5 hours. Remove the bay leaf before serving. Taste and adjust seasoning. Serve in a deep bowl with crusty bread. Tossing the beef in flour before adding it to the slow cooker is the step that gives this stew its naturally thick, rich consistency. The flour dissolves into the broth during cooking and thickens it gradually without any extra effort. This stew is significantly better the next day, making it one of the best batch cooking recipes on this list. Freeze individual portions flat in containers and you'll have comforting dinners ready for weeks. The long, slow cooking at low temperature is what makes cheap braising cuts tender. This is genuinely one of the few cooking methods where the most affordable cut produces the best result. Budget-wise, cheap stewing beef and basic root vegetables cost very little and produce a pot of stew that feels genuinely luxurious and warming. Number 3. Slow cooker, creamy tomato chicken. This is one of the most versatile and crowd-pleasing slow cooker dinners there is. Chicken cooked low and slow in a rich tomato sauce that becomes creamy and silky in the last few minutes with just a small addition of cream or evaporated milk. It works over pasta, over rice, or simply with bread for dipping. Here's what you need: 4 chicken thighs, 1 can of crushed tomatoes, 1 onion, diced, 3 cloves of garlic, minced, a teaspoon of dried Italian herbs, half a cup of chicken broth, a quarter cup of cream or evaporated milk, added at the end, salt and pepper. Place your chicken thighs in the slow cooker. Add your crushed tomatoes, diced onion, minced garlic, Italian herbs, broth, salt, and pepper. Stir the sauce around the chicken. Cover and cook on low for 6 hours or high for 3.5 hours. In the last 15 minutes of cooking, stir in your cream or evaporated milk. Replace the lid for the remaining time. Serve over pasta or rice and spoon the sauce generously over the top. Adding the cream only in the last 15 minutes rather than at the beginning prevents it from curdling during the long cooking time. Dairy added too early in a slow cooker can separate and become grainy, so this timing matters. The sauce from this dish is so good that bread for dipping is genuinely recommended regardless of whatever you serve it with. For a slightly more substantial sauce, stir in a handful of baby spinach alongside the cream in the last 15 minutes. It wilts instantly and adds both color and nutrition without changing the flavor significantly. Budget-wise, chicken thighs and a can of crushed tomatoes are among the most affordable ingredients in any grocery store, and the result is something that feels genuinely restaurant quality. Number 4. Slow cooker split pea and ham soup. This is one of the great classic comfort soups, thick, warming, deeply savory, and made almost entirely from pantry staples and very little money. Split peas break down completely during slow cooking, creating a naturally thick, creamy soup without any blending required. And a small amount of ham gives the whole pot a richness that develops beautifully over hours. Here's what you need. 1 cup of dried green or yellow split peas, rinsed, 1 ham hock or a generous handful of diced ham, 1 onion, diced, 2 carrots, diced, 2 stalks of celery, diced, 3 cups of chicken broth, 2 cups of water, a bay leaf, salt and pepper. Place everything directly into the slow cooker. Split peas, ham, vegetables, broth, water, and bay leaf. Give it a stir. Cover and cook on low for 8 to 9 hours or high for 5 hours. The split peas will break down completely and the soup will thicken naturally. If using a ham hock, remove it at the end, shred any meat from the bone, and return it to the soup. Remove the bay leaf. Taste and adjust seasoning. And split peas do not need soaking before going into the slow cooker. They break down on their own during the long cooking time, which is one of the things that makes this recipe so genuinely effortless. If the soup seems thicker than you'd like when you come back to it, simply stir in a small splash of warm water or broth until it reaches the consistency you prefer. This soup freezes exceptionally well and actually improves in flavor after freezing and thawing, making it one of the best batch cooking recipes on this entire list. Budget-wise, dried split peas are one of the cheapest ingredients available in any grocery store, and a small amount of ham goes an enormous distance when simmered for hours in a slow cooker. Number 5. Dump and go pulled pork. Pulled pork from a slow cooker is one of the most impressive things you can produce for almost no active effort, and the fact that a cheap cut of pork shoulder becomes something so tender and flavorful after a day in the slow cooker is genuinely one of the most satisfying results in budget cooking. It makes multiple meals from a single cook, which makes it one of the best value recipes on this list. Here's what you need. Around 500 grams of pork shoulder, boneless, 1 onion, sliced, 3 cloves of garlic, minced, 2 tablespoons of tomato paste, 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar, 1 tablespoon of brown sugar or honey, a teaspoon of smoked paprika, half a teaspoon of cumin, half a cup of chicken or vegetable broth, salt and pepper. Season your pork shoulder generously with salt, pepper, smoked paprika, and cumin. Place your sliced onion in the bottom of the slow cooker as a bed for the pork. Place the pork on top. Mix together your tomato paste, vinegar, sugar or honey, and broth. Then pour over the pork. Cover and cook on low for 8 to 9 hours or high for 5 to 6 hours until the pork is completely tender and falls apart when pressed with a fork. Shred the pork directly in the slow cooker using 2 forks. Stir everything together so the meat absorbs the cooking juices. Serve on a bun, over rice, or wrapped in a soft tortilla. The onion bed underneath the pork serves 2 purposes. It elevates the meat slightly so it doesn't sit directly in the liquid, and it caramelizes into the cooking juices over the long cooking time, adding significant depth to the final flavor. Pork shoulder is specifically one of the best slow cooker cuts because it has enough fat marbled through it to stay moist and become tender over the long cooking time. Store leftover pulled pork in the fridge for up to 4 days or freeze in individual portions. It reheats perfectly and works in sandwiches, wraps, and rice bowls. Budget-wise, pork shoulder is one of the most affordable cuts of meat available and produces enough pulled pork for 3 to 4 separate meals from a single cook, making the cost per meal genuinely tiny. Number 6. Slow cooker, white bean and sausage stew. White beans and sausage have been one of the great budget cooking combinations for generations. The beans absorb the smoky, savory flavor of the sausage over long cooking and become creamy and rich in a way that feels far more indulgent than anything this affordable has any right to. Here's what you need: 2 cans of white cannellini beans, drained and rinsed, 3 or 4 inexpensive sausages sliced into rounds, 1 can of diced tomatoes, 1 onion, diced, 2 cloves of garlic, minced, 1 cup of chicken broth, a teaspoon of dried thyme and rosemary, salt and pepper. Place everything directly into the slow cooker. Give it a stir. Cover and cook on low for 6 to 7 hours or high for 3 to 4 hours. Before serving, use the back of a spoon to mash a few of the beans against the side of the slow cooker and stir through. This thickens the stew naturally and gives it a wonderful creamy body without adding anything else. Serve in a deep bowl with crusty bread on the side. Slicing the sausages into rounds before slow cooking, rather than leaving them whole, allows the flavor to distribute more thoroughly through the beans and broth. You get a much more evenly flavored stew when the sausage is in pieces throughout, rather than sitting whole in one area. For a slightly smokier version, use smoked sausages instead of regular ones. The difference in the finished stew is remarkable for such a simple swap. This stew keeps well in the fridge for several days and actually improves as it sits. Budget-wise, canned white beans and inexpensive sausages cost very little together and produce a genuinely hearty, deeply satisfying stew. Number 7. Slow cooker chicken and sweet potato curry. A gentle, warming curry is one of the slow cooker's best results. The spices have hours to bloom and deepen. The chicken becomes meltingly tender, and the sweet potato breaks down slightly into the sauce, giving it a natural sweetness and body that makes the finished curry feel genuinely luxurious. This version is built to be mild and approachable rather than spicy, comforting rather than challenging. Here's what you need: 4 chicken thighs, boneless, 1 medium sweet potato, peeled and cubed, 1 can of diced tomatoes, 1 can of coconut milk, 1 onion, diced, 3 cloves of garlic, minced, 1 teaspoon of mild curry powder, half a teaspoon of turmeric, half a teaspoon of cumin, salt, a handful of frozen spinach to add at the end. Place your chicken thighs, cubed sweet potato, diced tomatoes, coconut milk, onion, garlic, and all the spices into the slow cooker. Stir everything together. Cover and cook on low for 6 to 7 hours or high for 3 to 4 hours. In the last 30 minutes, stir in your frozen spinach. Replace the lid. Shred the chicken roughly with 2 forks before serving. Serve over rice. The coconut milk in this recipe does not need to be full fat. Light coconut milk produces a slightly thinner sauce, but still delivers the same flavor and at a lower cost. If the curry sauce seems thinner than you'd like when it's done, remove the lid for the last 30 minutes of cooking on high to allow some of the liquid to evaporate and concentrate. The sweet potato will partially break down into the sauce over the long cooking time, which is intentional. It thickens the sauce naturally and adds a beautiful sweetness. Budget-wise, chicken thighs, 1 sweet potato, and pantry spices make this one of the most nutritious and flavorful budget slow cooker meals on this entire list. Number 8. Dump and go beef taco filling. This is the slow cooker recipe that produces the most meals per cook. A pot of slow-cooked seasoned beef mince that works in tacos, over rice, in wraps, on a baked potato, or simply eaten straight from a bowl. Making it in the slow cooker rather than a pan produces a much more deeply flavored, tender result, because the beef has hours to absorb all the spices. Here's what you need: around 500 grams of beef mince, 1 can of diced tomatoes, 1 can of kidney beans, drained, 1 onion, diced, 3 cloves of garlic, minced, 1 teaspoon of chili powder, 1 teaspoon of cumin, half a teaspoon of smoked paprika, salt and pepper, half a cup of beef broth. Place everything directly into the slow cooker. Break up the beef mince as much as possible before adding. It doesn't need to be browned first, though you can if you prefer. Give everything a thorough stir to combine. Cover and cook on low for 6 to 8 hours, or high for 3 to 4 hours. Stir everything together before serving. The beef will have broken down completely into the sauce and the flavors will be deeply developed. The beef does not need to be browned before going into the slow cooker in this recipe. The long cooking time develops enough flavor on its own, and skipping the browning step is what makes this a true dump-and-go recipe. This filling freezes exceptionally well in individual portions and reheats perfectly in the microwave in minutes, making it one of the best batch cooking recipes on this entire list. For a slightly richer result, add a tablespoon of tomato paste alongside the other ingredients. Budget-wise, beef mince and canned kidney beans together are among the most affordable protein combinations available, and this one pot produces enough filling for 4 to 5 separate meals. Number 9. Slow cooker, potato and leek soup. Potato and leek soup made in a slow cooker is one of those soups that seems almost too simple to be as good as it turns out. But the hours of gentle heat do something to the potatoes and leeks that you simply cannot replicate in 20 minutes on the stove. The flavors deepen and mellow, and the finished soup has a sweetness and complexity that feels far more elaborate than its humble ingredients would suggest. Here's what you need. 4 medium potatoes, peeled and cubed. 2 leeks, white and light green parts only, sliced and rinsed. 2 cloves of garlic, minced. 3 cups of chicken or vegetable broth. 2 tablespoons of butter. Salt and pepper. A splash of cream or milk to finish. Place your potatoes, leeks, garlic, broth, butter, salt, and pepper into the slow cooker. Give it a stir. Cover and cook on low for 7 to 8 hours, or high for 4 hours. When the potatoes are completely tender, use an immersion blender to blend the soup to your preferred consistency, fully smooth, partially blended, or left entirely chunky, depending on your preference. Stir in a small splash of cream or milk. Taste and adjust seasoning. Serve with crusty bread. Rinsing sliced leeks thoroughly under cold water is important. Leeks trap soil between their layers, and a quick rinse removes it completely before cooking. If you prefer a chunkier soup, reserve a spoonful of the cooked potato and leek before blending and stir it back in afterward. It gives a lovely rustic texture. This soup freezes perfectly and is one of the most comforting things to pull from the freezer on a cold evening when cooking isn't an option. Budget-wise, potatoes and leeks are 2 of the most affordable vegetables available, and a pot of this soup costs almost nothing while producing multiple generous servings. Number 10. Dump and go teriyaki salmon. Slow cooker salmon sounds unusual to anyone who has only ever pan-seared or baked fish, but cooked gently in a teriyaki sauce on low heat, it becomes extraordinarily tender and absorbs the sweet, savory flavors completely in a way that a quick pan cook simply cannot achieve. Using canned salmon makes this one of the most affordable dinners on this list while delivering full nutritional value. Here's what you need. 2 cans of salmon, drained. 3 tablespoons of soy sauce. 2 tablespoons of honey. 1 tablespoon of rice vinegar. 2 cloves of garlic, minced. Half a teaspoon of fresh or ground ginger. A teaspoon of cornstarch dissolved in a tablespoon of cold water. A little sesame oil if you have it. Spring onion and sesame seeds to finish. Mix your soy sauce, honey, vinegar, garlic, and ginger together to make the teriyaki sauce. Place the drained salmon in the slow cooker, keeping it in larger chunks rather than breaking it up completely. Pour the teriyaki sauce over the top. Cover and cook on low for 1.5 to 2 hours only. Salmon needs far less time than meat, and overcooking it will make it dry. In the last 15 minutes, stir in your cornstarch mixture to thicken the sauce. Serve over rice. Spoon the thickened teriyaki sauce generously over the top. Finish with spring onion and sesame seeds. The shorter cooking time for this recipe is important. This is not an all-day slow cooker recipe. Set it to low and check at 90 minutes. Because canned salmon is already cooked, you are essentially heating it through and infusing it with the teriyaki flavor rather than cooking it from raw, which is why the time is so much shorter than the other recipes on this list. This is a genuinely excellent recipe for days when you want to set something up after lunch rather than first thing in the morning. Budget-wise, canned salmon is one of the most affordable seafood options available and delivers the same nutritional profile as fresh salmon at a fraction of the cost. Number 11. Slow cooker vegetable and chickpea stew. This is the fully vegetarian option on this list, and it is genuinely one of the most satisfying and complete of all 12 recipes, which is a meaningful thing to say about a dish with no meat in it at all. Chickpeas become wonderfully creamy over long, slow cooking, the vegetables sweeten and deepen, and the spiced tomato broth develops into something rich and warming that feels completely substantial. Here's what you need. 2 cans of chickpeas, drained and rinsed, 1 can of diced tomatoes, 2 carrots, peeled and diced, 2 potatoes, peeled and cubed, 1 onion, diced, 2 cloves of garlic, minced, 2 cups of vegetable broth, 1 teaspoon of smoked paprika, 1 teaspoon of cumin, half a teaspoon of turmeric, salt and pepper, a squeeze of lemon to finish. Place everything directly into the slow cooker. Stir to combine. Cover and cook on low for 7 to 8 hours or high for 4 hours. Before serving, mash a few of the chickpeas against the side of the slow cooker with the back of a spoon and stir through to thicken the stew naturally. Finish with a squeeze of lemon juice. Taste and adjust seasoning. Serve in a deep bowl with bread for dipping or over a small portion of rice. The combination of smoked paprika, cumin, and turmeric in the stew creates a flavor profile that is warming and complex without being spicy, genuinely approachable for anyone who finds curry too bold. A large handful of frozen spinach stirred in during the last 30 minutes of cooking adds significant nutrition and a beautiful color to the finished stew without changing the flavor in any meaningful way. This stew is one of the best value recipes on this entire list. 2 cans of chickpeas and basic pantry spices cost very little and produce a genuinely hearty meal. Budget-wise, chickpeas are one of the most affordable protein sources available anywhere, and this stew produces generous portions at a cost that is genuinely minimal per serving. Number 12. Slow cooker rice pudding. We are ending this list with something that many people would never think to make in a slow cooker. And yet slow cooker rice pudding is one of the most supremely comforting, perfectly textured, and effortless versions of this classic that you can make. The long, gentle heat creates a creaminess that stovetop methods spend 30 minutes trying to achieve and never quite match. Here's what you need. Half a cup of short grain or pudding rice, 2.5 cups of whole milk, half a cup of water, 3 tablespoons of sugar or honey, a teaspoon of vanilla extract, a pinch of nutmeg or cinnamon, a tablespoon of butter. Place your rice, milk, water, sugar or honey, vanilla, and butter directly into the slow cooker. Stir to combine. Cover and cook on low for 3 to 4 hours, stirring once every hour if you're home to do so, though the pudding will still turn out well if you can only stir it once or not at all. When the rice is tender and the pudding has thickened into a creamy, porridge-like consistency, serve warm in a bowl. A sprinkle of cinnamon or nutmeg on top and a drizzle of honey finishes it beautifully. Short grain or pudding rice is important here. Long grain rice does not have the same starch content and will not produce the same creamy result. If you find the pudding has thickened more than you'd like by the time you come back to it, stir in a small splash of warm milk until it loosens to the right consistency. For a slightly more indulgent version, substitute half a cup of the milk for cream in the last 30 minutes of cooking. It adds a richness that makes this feel genuinely special. Budget-wise, half a cup of rice and 2.5 cups of milk costs almost nothing, and the result is one of the most comforting, warming, and satisfying ways to end a meal for almost no cost at all. 12 slow cooker dinners. Every single one a true dump and go. Ingredients in, lid on, walk away. Every single one budget-friendly. And every single one the kind of meal that makes you feel properly looked after at the end of the day without asking anything difficult of you in return. Which one are you trying first? Drop the number in the comments. We read every one. And thank you to everyone who wrote in asking for slow cooker recipes. This video is for you. New recipes every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Until next time, take care of yourself. You deserve a good dinner. See you soon.